Welcome back. Let's start reading some more. It's why this computer video call looking at gamer PC hardware. This is how I got started. I was reading about computer processors and all kind of computer and Intel. So, but then I did start to read about everything else like aircraft and battle tanks, all kind of stuff. But this is a part of my computer reading. Mechanical calculators. I need half a minute. I need to get to my bed and my blanket on. I will make a video after I finish reading. I will make a video in my language, Danish. I was supposed to do in English too, but I don't have the energy to do that because I'm getting old. I start to getting old.
Mechanical calculator. This article has multiple issues. Please help improve it or discuss these issues on the talk page. Learn how and when to remove these template messages. This article may require cleanup to meet Wikipedia's quality standards. The specific problem is, the article goes on for way too long about various technical aspects that aren't necessary for the article. December 2022. This article may be too technical for most readers to understand. December 2022. A mechanical calculator, or calculating machine, is a mechanical device used to perform the basic operations of arithmetic automatically, or, historically, a simulation such as an analog computer or a slide rule. Most mechanical calculators were comparable in size to small desktop computers and have been rendered obsolete by the advent of the electronic calculator and the digital computer. Surviving notes from Wilhelm Schickard in 1623 reveal that he designed and had built the earliest of the modern attempts at mechanizing calculation. His machine was composed of two sets of technologies, first an abacus made of Napier's bones, to simplify multiplications and divisions first described 6 years earlier in 1617, and for the mechanical part, it had a dialed pedometer to perform additions and subtractions. A study of the surviving notes shows a machine that would have jammed after a few entries on the same dial, and that it could be damaged if a carry had to be propagated over a few digits, like adding 1 to 999. Schickard abandoned his project in 1624 and never mentioned it again until his death 11 years later in 1635. 2 decades after Schickard's supposedly failed attempt, in 1642, Blaise Pascal decisively solved these particular problems with his invention of the mechanical calculator. Co-opted into his father's labor as tax collector in Rouen, Pascal designed the calculator to help in the large amount of tedious arithmetic required. It was called Pascal's calculator or Pascaline. In 1672, Gottfried Leibniz started designing an entirely new machine called the stepped reckoner. It used a stepped drum, built by and named after him. The Leibniz wheel was the first two-motion calculator, the first to use cursors, creating a memory of the first operand, and the first to have a movable carriage. Leibniz built two stepped reckoners, one in 1694 and one in 1706. The Leibniz wheel was used in many calculating machines for 200 years, and into the 1970s with the Curter hand calculator, until the advent of the electronic calculator in the mid-1970s. Leibniz was also the first to promote the idea of an pinwheel calculator. Thomas arithmometer. The first commercially successful machine was manufactured 200 years later in 1851. It was the first mechanical calculator strong enough and reliable enough to be used daily in an office environment. For 40 years the arithmometer was the only type of mechanical calculator available for sale until the industrial production of the more successful Lardner arithmometer in 1890. The comptometer, introduced in 1887, was the first machine to use a keyboard that consisted of columns of 9 keys, from 1 to 9, for each digit. The Dalton adding machine, manufactured in 1902, was the first to have a 10-key keyboard. Electric motors were used on some mechanical calculators from 1901. In 1961, a comptometer-type machine, the Anita MK7 from Sumlock Comptometer Limited, became the first desktop mechanical calculator to receive an all-electronic calculator engine, creating the link in between these two industries and marking the beginning of its decline. The production of mechanical calculators came to a stop in the middle of the 1970s, closing an industry that had lasted for 120 years. Charles Babbage designed 2 new kinds of mechanical calculators, which were so big that they required the power of a steam engine to operate, and that were too sophisticated to be built in his lifetime. The first one was an automatic mechanical calculator, his difference engine, which could automatically compute and print mathematical tables. In 1855, Georg Schiutz became the first of a handful of designers to succeed at building a smaller and simpler model of his difference engine. The second one was a programmable mechanical calculator, his analytical engine, which Babbage started to design in 1834. In less than 2 years he had sketched out many of the salient features of the modern computer. A crucial step was the adoption of a punched card system derived from the Jacquard loom, making it infinitely programmable. In 1937, Howard Aiken convinced IBM to design and build the ASCC/Mark I, the first machine of its kind, based on the architecture of the analytical engine. When the machine was finished, some hailed it as Babbage's dream come true. Ancient History, edit. Further information, Arithmetic and Abacus. The desire to economize time and mental effort in arithmetical computations, and to eliminate human liability to error, is probably as old as the science of arithmetic itself. This desire has led to the design and construction of a variety of aids to calculation, beginning with groups of small objects, such as pebbles, first used loosely, later as counters on ruled boards, and later still as beads mounted on wires fixed in a frame, as in the abacus. This instrument was probably invented by the Semitic races and later adopted in India, whence it spread westward throughout Europe and eastward to China and Japan. After the development of the abacus, no further advances were made until John Napier devised his numbering rods, or Napier's bones, in 1617. Various forms of the bones appeared, some approaching the beginning of mechanical computation, but it was not until 1642 that Blaise Pascal gave us the first mechanical calculating machine in the sense that the term is used today. Howard Aiken proposed automatic calculating machine, presented to IBM in 1937. Further information, Pascal's calculator. A short list of other precursors to the mechanical calculator must include a group of mechanical analog computers which, once set, are only modified by the continuous and repeated action of their actuators, crank handle, weight, wheel, water. Before the Common Era, there are odometers and the Antikythera mechanism, a seemingly out of place, unique, geared astronomical clock, followed more than a millennium later by early mechanical clocks, geared astrolabes, and followed in the 15th century by pedometers. These machines were all made of toothed gears linked by some sort of carry mechanisms. These machines always produce identical results for identical initial settings, unlike a mechanical calculator where all the wheels are independent but are also linked together by the rules of arithmetic. The 17th century, edit. Overview, edit. The 17th century marked the beginning of the history of mechanical calculators, as it saw the invention of its first machines, including Pascal's calculator, in 1642. Blaise Pascal had invented a machine which he presented as being able to perform computations that were previously thought to be only humanly possible. In a sense, Pascal's invention was premature, in that the mechanical arts in his time were not sufficiently advanced to enable his machine to be made at an economic price, with the accuracy and strength needed for reasonably long use. This difficulty was not overcome until well on into the 19th century, by which time also a renewed stimulus to invention was given by the need for many kinds of calculation more intricate than those considered by Pascal. S. Chapman, Pascal Tercentenary Celebration, London, 1942. The 17th century also saw the invention of some very powerful tools to aid arithmetic calculations like Napier's bones, logarithmic tables and the slide rule which, for their ease of use by scientists in multiplying and dividing, ruled over and impeded the use and development of mechanical calculators until the production release of the arithmometer in the mid-19th century. 4 of Pascal's calculators and one machine built by Lepin in 1725, Musée des Arts et Métiers. Invention of the mechanical calculator, edit. In 1623 and 1624 Wilhelm Schickard, in 2 letters that he sent to Johannes Kepler, reported his design and construction of what he referred to as an arithmeticum organum, arithmetical instrument, which would later be described as a Rechenauer, calculating clock. The machine was designed to assist in all the 4 basic functions of arithmetic: addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. Amongst its uses, Schickard suggested it would help in the laborious task of calculating astronomical tables. The machine could add and subtract 6-digit numbers, and indicated an overflow of this capacity by ringing a bell. The adding machine in the base was primarily provided to assist in the difficult task of adding or multiplying 2 multidigit numbers. To this end an ingenious arrangement of rotatable Napier's bones were mounted on it. It even had an additional memory register to record intermediate calculations. Whilst Schickard noted that the adding machine was working, his letters mention that he had asked a professional, a clockmaker named Johann Pfister, to build a finished machine. Regrettably it was destroyed in a fire either whilst still incomplete, or in any case before delivery. Schickard abandoned his project soon after. He and his entire family were wiped out in 1635 by bubonic plague during the 30 Years' War. Schickard's machine used clock wheels which were made stronger and were therefore heavier, to prevent them from being damaged by the force of an operator input. Each digit used a display wheel, an input wheel and an intermediate wheel. During a carry transfer all these wheels meshed with the wheels of the digit receiving the carry. Blaise Pascal invented a mechanical calculator with a sophisticated carry mechanism in 1642. After 3 years of effort and 50 prototypes he introduced his calculator to the public. He built 20 of these machines in the following 10 years. This machine could add and subtract 2 numbers directly and multiply and divide by repetition. Since, unlike Schickard's machine, the Pascaline dials could only rotate in one direction, zeroing it after each calculation required the operator to dial in all 9s and then, method of re-zeroing, propagate a carry right through the machine. This suggests that the carry mechanism would have proved itself in practice many times over. This is a testament to the quality of the Pascal line because none of the 17th and 18th century criticisms of the machine mentioned a problem with the carry mechanism, and yet it was fully tested on all the machines, by their resets, all the time. Pascal's invention of the calculating machine, just 300 years ago, was made while he was a youth of 19. He was spurred to it by seeing the burden of arithmetical labor involved in his father's official work as supervisor of taxes at Rouen. He conceived the idea of doing the work mechanically, and developed a design appropriate for this purpose, showing herein the same combination of pure science and mechanical genius that characterized his whole life. But it was one thing to conceive and design the machine, and another to get it made and put into use. Here were needed those practical gifts that he displayed later in his inventions. S. Chapman, Pascal Tercentenary Celebration, London, 1942. In 1672, Gottfried Leibniz started working on adding direct multiplication to what he understood was the working of Pascal's calculator. However, it is doubtful that he had ever fully seen the mechanism, and the method could not have worked because of the lack of reversible rotation in the mechanism. Accordingly, he eventually designed an entirely new machine called the stepped reckoner. It used his Leibniz wheels, was the first two-motion calculator, the first to use cursors, creating a memory of the first operand, and the first to have a movable carriage. Leibniz built two stepped reckoners, one in 1694 and one in 1706. Only the machine built in 1694 is known to exist. It was rediscovered at the end of the 19th century, having been forgotten in an attic in the University of Göttingen. In 1893, the German calculating machine inventor Arthur Burckhardt was asked to put Leibniz's machine in operating condition if possible. His report was favorable except for the sequence in the carry. Leibniz had invented his namesake wheel and the principle of a two-motion calculator, but after 40 years of development he wasn't able to produce a machine that was fully operational. This makes Pascal's calculator the only working mechanical calculator in the 17th century. Leibniz was also the first person to describe a pinwheel calculator. He once said, "It is unworthy of excellent men to lose hours like slaves in the labor of calculation which could safely be relegated to anyone else if machines were used." Other calculating machines, edit. Schickard, Pascal and Leibniz were inevitably inspired by the role of clockwork, which was highly celebrated in the 17th century. However, simple-minded application of interlinked gears was insufficient for any of their purposes. Schickard introduced the use of a single-toothed mutilated gear to enable the carry to take place. Pascal improved on that with his famous weighted sorter. Leibniz went even further in relation to the ability to use a movable carriage to perform multiplication more efficiently, albeit at the expense of a fully working carry mechanism. I devised a third which works by springs and which has a very simple design. This is the one, as I have already stated, that I used many times, hidden in the plain sight of an infinity of persons, and which is still in operating order. Nevertheless, while always improving on it, I found reasons to change its design. Pascal, advertisement necessary to those who have curiosity to see the arithmetic machine, and to operate it, 1645. When, several years ago, I saw for the first time an instrument which, when carried, automatically records the numbers of steps by a pedestrian, it occurred to me at once that the entire arithmetic could be subjected to a similar kind of machinery, so that not only counting but also addition and subtraction, multiplication and division could be accomplished by a suitably arranged machine easily, promptly, and with sure results. Leibniz, on his calculating machine, 1685. The principle of the clock, input wheels and display wheels added to a clock-like mechanism, for a direct entry calculating machine couldn't be implemented to create a fully effective calculating machine without additional innovation with the technological capabilities of the 17th century. Because their gears would jam when a carry had to be moved several places along the accumulator. The only 17th century calculating clocks that have survived to this day do not have a machine-wide carry mechanism and therefore cannot be called fully effective mechanical calculators. A much more successful calculating clock was built by the Italian Giovanni Pallini in the 18th century and was a two-motion calculating clock. The numbers are inscribed first and then they are processed. 1 in 1623, Wilhelm Schickard, a German professor of Hebrew and astronomy, designed a calculating clock which he drew on two letters that he wrote to Johannes Kepler. The first machine to be built by a professional was destroyed during its construction and Schickard abandoned his project in 1624. These drawings had appeared in various publications over the centuries, starting in 1718 with a book of Kepler's letters by Michael Hanske, but in 1957 it was presented for the first time as a long-lost mechanical calculator by Dr. Franz Hammer. The building of the first replica in the 1960s showed that Schickard's machine had an unfinished design and therefore wheels and springs were added to make it work. The use of these replicas showed that the single-tooth wheel, when used within a calculating clock, was an inadequate carry mechanism. See Pascal versus Schickard. This did not mean that such a machine could not be used in practice, but the operator, when faced with the mechanism resisting rotation, in the unusual circumstances of a carry being required beyond, say, 3 dials, would need to help the subsequent carry to propagate. To around 1643, a French clockmaker from Rouen, after hearing of Pascal's work, built what he claimed to be a calculating clock of his own design. Pascal fired all his employees and stopped developing his calculator as soon as he heard of the news. It is only after being assured that his invention would be protected by a royal privilege that he restarted his activity. A careful examination of this calculating clock showed that it didn't work properly and Pascal called it an aborted fetus. 3 in 1659, the Italian Tito Livio Burattini built a machine with 9 independent wheels. Each one of these wheels was paired with a smaller carry wheel. At the end of an operation, the user had to either manually add each carry to the next digit or mentally add these numbers to create the final result. 4 in 1666, Samuel Morland invented a machine designed to add sums of money, but it was not a true adding machine since the carry was added to a small carry wheel situated above each digit and not directly to the next digit. It was very similar to Burattini's machine. Morland created also a multiplying machines with interchangeable discs based on Napier's bones. Taken together, these two machines provided a capacity similar to that of the invention of Schickard, although it is doubtful that Morland ever encountered Schickard's calculating clock. 5 in 1673, the French clockmaker René Grillet described in Curiosités mathématiques de l'invention du Sister Grillet, Horloger à Paris, a calculating machine that would be more compact than Pascal's calculator and reversible for subtraction. The only 2 Grillet machines known have no carry mechanism. Displaying 3 lines of 9 independent dials, they also have 9 rotating Napier's rod for multiplication and division. Contrary to Grillet's claim, it was not a mechanical calculator after all. The 18th century, edit. Overview, edit. Further information, pinwheel calculator and Leibniz wheel. The 18th century saw the first mechanical calculator that could perform a multiplication automatically. Designed and built by Giovanni Pellini in 1709 and made of wood, it was the first successful calculating clock. For all the machines built in this century, division still required the operator to decide when to stop a repeated subtraction at each index, and therefore these machines were only providing a help in dividing, like an abacus. Both pinwheel calculators and Leibniz wheel calculators were built with a few unsuccessful attempts at their commercialization. Prototypes and limited runs, edit. 1 in 1709, Italian Giovanni Pellini was the first to build a calculator that could multiply automatically. It used a pinwheel design, was the first operational calculating clock and was made of wood. He destroyed it after hearing that Antonius Braun had received 10,000 guldens for dedicating a pinwheel machine of his own design to the Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI in Vienna. 2 in 1725, the French Academy of Sciences certified a calculating machine derived from Pascal's calculator designed by Lepin, a French craftsman. The machine was a bridge in between Pascal's calculator and a calculating clock. The carry transmissions were performed simultaneously, like in a calculating clock, and therefore the machine must have jumped beyond a few simultaneous carry transmissions. 3 in 1727, German Anton Braun presented the first fully functional four-operation machine to Emperor Charles VI in Vienna. It was cylindrical in shape and was made of steel, silver and brass. It was finely decorated and looked like a Renaissance table clock. His dedication to the emperor engraved on the top of the machine also reads, "To make easy to ignorant people, addition, subtraction, multiplication and even division." 4 in 1730, the French Academy of Sciences certified 3 machines designed by Hilaire de Bois de Saint-Dié. The first one used a single-tooth carry mechanism which, according to Bois de Saint-Dié, wouldn't work properly if a carry had to be moved more than 2 places. The 2 other machines used springs that were gradually armed until they released their energy when a carry had to be moved forward. It was similar to Pascal's calculator, but instead of using the energy of gravity, Bois de Saint-Dié used the energy stored into the springs. 5 in 1770, Philipp Matthaus Hahn, a German pastor, built 2 circular calculating machines based on Leibniz cylinders. J.C. Schuster, Hahn's brother-in-law, built a few machines of Hahn's design into the early 19th century. 6 in 1775, Lord Stanhope of the United Kingdom designed a pinwheel machine. It was set in a rectangular box with a handle on the side. He also designed a machine using Leibniz wheels in 1777. In 1777 Stanhope produced the logic demonstrator, a machine designed to solve problems in formal logic. This device marked the beginning of a new approach to the solution of logical problems by mechanical methods. 7 in 1784, German Johann Helfrich Müller built a machine very similar to Hahn's machine. The 19th century, edit. Overview, edit. Luigi Torchi invented the first direct multiplication machine in 1834. This was also the second key-driven machine in the world, following that of James White, 1822. The mechanical calculator industry started in 1851. Thomas de Colmar released his simplified arithmometra, which was the first machine that could be used daily in an office environment. For 40 years, the arithmometer was the only mechanical calculator available for sale and was sold all over the world. By 1890, about 2,500 arithmometers had been sold, plus a few hundreds more from 2 licensed arithmometer clone makers, Burckhardt, Germany, 1878 and Leighton, UK, 1883. Felt and Tarrant, the only other competitor in true commercial production, had sold 100 comptometers in 3 years. The 19th century also saw the designs of Charles Babbage calculating machines, first with his difference engine, started in 1822, which was the first automatic calculator since it continuously used the results of the previous operation for the next one, and second with his analytical engine, which was the first programmable calculator, using Jacquard's cards to read program and data, that he started in 1834, and which gave the blueprint of the mainframe computers built in the middle of the 20th century. Desktop mechanical calculators in production during the 19th century. Desktop calculators produced, edit. 1 in 1851,